Goodkind, and I want to welcome you here today. From the beginning of time, stories have been mankind's way of looking at his world. Early man sat around campfires telling stories about how they conquered predators or how they found food. It's stories of how they found their way in the world and how they could pass on their knowledge to younger generations. Our lives are the most precious thing we have. That time we're here, the time that we're conscious and aware, is to us our universe. And stories are a window to how we look at the universe, how we look at the world around us, how we look at our own lives. And they tell us what matters to us. They connect us to the things in our lives that are important. They're little bits of our philosophy about life. While I'm telling the Sort of Truth series, while I'm telling the story of these books, I'm not thinking about, readers will like this or readers won't like this. I'm trying to entertain myself. So I want to tell stories that are interesting and keep me interested and fascinated and keep me having fun. So these are my fairy tales that I'm telling myself. The only difference is that in my world, the fairies can make you bleed. Confessor has to do with Kaylin, Richard's love, who is introduced in the first book, and Richard doesn't know who a confessor is or what a confessor is. The book Confessor that brings to conclusion the whole series, in essence, is Kaylin finding out who she is in this world. In the final trilogy of the book, in Chainfire and Phantom and Confessor, the storyline is that she has lost her memory of who she is. So it strikes to the heart of what we think of ourselves and how we think of our world around us. Because time is so precious to us, as I said, our time in the world is limited, it's finite. So every moment that we have that we spend on something or we give away is a moment we're never going to have back. So I feel a very strong sense of commitment to my readers' time. Their time is valuable, and I don't want to waste their time. Part of my thinking about how to approach a series when I began was I don't want to have a series of cliffhangers, because it's very frustrating for me when I read books like that. I like to have a conclusion to a story. So each one of the books along the way, I've tried to have a resolution to the conflict within that book. Now there's a larger ongoing conflict within the whole series, and the story arc of that whole series is like the story arc of our life. We may have some conflict in our life that we have to resolve, but that doesn't mean that our life doesn't have a background story that goes on. However, there's a larger context of the background war that's going on and how they're facing that larger conflict. And that's the story of the whole series. So the story of each book is a story within itself, within a larger story. The conclusion to the series, the Chainfire trilogy at the end, because the series is so large and sweeping and epic, I didn't feel that it was fair to the story to conclude it with one book. I wanted to have a conclusion that was as grand as the whole series. So the final three books in the series, Chainfire, Phantom, and Confessor, are a story unto themselves, and they're another subplot within this larger context of the universe of the Sort of Truth books. We discover throughout this series how myth is born, and in Confessor we come to see the gateway into this larger view of where myth comes from, what founds our understanding of myth, how these stories become larger than life, and where they lead mankind, where they lead the characters. These characters are very real to me. I've spent a decade and a half with them, and these are my friends, and I spend 7 days a week writing about them and being in their world and thinking about them. In that story, from the beginning towards the end, I kept coming across all these interesting things that I wanted to explore along the way. So some of the books were explorations of those things, which added into the sum total of the whole series. From the beginning, I've always known what that conclusion is, and sometimes it's very difficult when I'm in the beginning in the third book and something happens and I know the resolution in the final book, and it's like keeping a secret all that time. I just can't wait to tell that part of the story, to get to that part, so that readers can have the fun that I'm having of seeing where this is all going. So I've known where the story is going from the beginning, and it's been a fantastic, fun journey along the way. And the conclusion to it is a deep satisfaction for me, because just like writing a book where you have a beginning, a middle, and an end, to write the end of the series, the conclusion to this large background story, is a tremendous amount of fun. And it's the payoff to all of this work I've been doing for a decade and a half, to put the whole series in context, to put the cap on it, and have it all be a unified entity, and have everyone see where it's been going from the very beginning. When you give time to the person that you love, that's part of your life that you're spending with that person. That's part of your existence that you're never going to get back. So it's important to understand what it is that we love about someone, why we care about them. And that's one of the things that has been really important to me about this series, is what is the nature of a relationship that matters? What is it about a person that we love that matters? Why are we drawn to certain people, and what kind of values do we care about in a person that we're going to spend our life with? Ultimately, when we love someone, we're loving what we love about ourselves. In the series, I wanted to show how valuable a relationship can really be. What rewards can you get from that relationship? And what do you put into that relationship, and what do you get out? The characters that I write about are characters who strongly believe in things. One of the things that's always irritated me about books and movies and TV programs is that evil is not just some guy in black robes floating through the room doing evil. No one who does evil wakes up in the morning thinking, I'm going to do evil. That's not the way people do evil. When someone's doing evil, they do it out of their sense of what's right, out of their sense of what's good. When those people flew the airplanes into the Pentagon and the World Trade Centers, they weren't doing something to do evil. They were doing what they thought was good. So those are the kind of characters that scare me the most, is the characters who are devoted to their philosophy, to what they think is good. And that's how the most evil things that mankind has ever done have been hatched, out of a sense of doing good. So the characters in my book are motivated by what they believe in. And in order to be believable in a story, that character has to be rounded. They have to be grounded in that philosophy that they believe. They have to be driven by those things. They have to have reasons to believe those things. They don't just decide to adopt a philosophy of hatred of life and a destruction of mankind offhandedly. They're pulled to those things by events in their life, by training they've had, by teaching they've had. So all of those things together add up to people who start wars because they think it's their duty to reform mankind in their image of how mankind should be. So philosophy drives everything we do. Philosophy drives the good and the bad. And which philosophy we're going to pick as to how we live our lives is the very stuff of story.